Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the DealFlow podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Huang, Chief Editor at BSCN, and with me, as ever, are esteemed guests Cam, the founder of both BSCN and leading crypto VC fund MH Ventures, and Mehdi, who leads investment and partnerships at none other than Animoca Brands. How are we doing, gents?
Very well. First time back in the office since Hong Kong, so I'm glad to be back and chatting with you guys.
Amazing. For context, Cam's been flexing on everybody that he's been to Hong Kong for about the past 7 days, so no change there for sure. Mehdi, how are you doing?
Good. Really excited about the SA launch, one of our portco that just launched a couple of hours ago, and excited about token 2049.
Amazing. Yeah, we're just having a discussion as to whether we're going to be able to get out there to Dubai. But before we begin podcast proper, I need to disclaim nothing in this episode is in any way intended to constitute financial advice. Everything is intended for entertainment purposes, and opinions expressed herein are just that, opinions. But without further ado, our topic today is crypto marketing. We'll explain a little bit what we really mean by that. But before we do dive into that topic, are there any market relevant stories, topics that we want to touch on, have a little natter about before we dive in?
We should talk about Solana and some of the news that's been coming out of there, Marginify, the CEO. I think we should jump on there. I've vaguely looked over it. I'm not sure if you guys know a little bit more.
So I can give a bit of context on that one for sure. So like you mentioned, I suppose two issues there, one of which is Solana congestion and the other of which is MarginFi, and they're linked from what I understand. So the first one, Solana transactions, and Mehdi, for the last 2-3 podcasts, you've been going on about how incredibly performant Solana is. So let's just remind ourselves a bit of context there. But it came out, I think, maybe tail end of last week, and it really came from one June Analytics dashboard that showed that 75% of non-vote transactions on Solana, so basically just proper transactions, fail. Right, the congestion at the moment with airdrops, meme coins, yada 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 yada, is so high that literally 3/4 of transactions are failing to go through, and like it's reflected in user reports and all the rest of it. So that's one issue in and of itself. The Solana devs have promised to fix by I think April 15th, so literally like 3-4 days, something like that. But then the other issue is MarginFi, which, as we know, is a big fat, I think probably the biggest Solana native borrowing and lending protocol. They had, take it back 2-3 weeks because of a sort of a point airdrop campaign they were running. They managed to accrue, I think it was nearly 900 million in TVL. But that is when sort of the issues started to happen. So I think going back to mid to late March, effectively stemming from, I think, technically speaking, an Oracle issue, meant that users just flat out couldn't withdraw their funds. So like mass complaints about funds being locked in the protocol, deposits were still live, yada, yada, yada. But I think a lot of the frustration came because they were looking to farm like a point scheme, an airdrop scheme for MarginFi, which never really came to fruition. So that in turn has resulted in, let's call it internal strife. I think a lot of details still to come out there, but their founder and CEO has now resigned, basically rage quit the project because of all the debacles and the saga going on internally, all the controversy. That in turn has led to a third issue, which is Solend, another Solana native DeFi protocol, effectively trying to implement a vampire attack on MarginFi's creditors, right? They're the depositors, so to speak, which involves, I think, Mehdi, correct me if I'm wrong, but involves basically rewarding
But don't they already have a token
via
then?
airdrops and points
Solent.
users that
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe they don't then.
Who Solend?
I don't know. I thought they
is
already
that
had a token.
SLND or something? But regardless, they'll have some treasury assets that they could give out for sure. But it's not users that move their funds to Solend. It's users that move their fund verifiably on chain out of MarginFi and into Solend. So I mean, I don't really know what the question is from this whole saga. But if we go back to square one,
So maybe the question is like, is that a good tactic or is that like morally wrong?
well, let's check Solend's DeFi. Let's
Yeah.
check
So
Solend's TVL.
while
See
you're
whether it works.
doing that, like, Med, what's your thoughts?
I think it's capitalism at its finest. So, for example, I think we saw this with Uniswap and SushiSwap as well through token incentive. It's basically like, let's say, Apple kind of giving token incentive, like not token incentive, but let's say equity incentive to all the people to kind of switch from, let's say, Windows computer to basically come and join Apple ecosystem. So I think it's akin to this. I think there could be a question about morality in terms of the timing of it. But I think in terms of principle of vampire attack and using incentive to kind of onboard user, I think it's capitalism at its finest. So I am not opposed to it.
I think Mehdi gave a great example being Uniswap and SushiSwap, where I guess they tried at the very beginning when was it Chef Nomi or whatever his name was, tried to do that with the farming or whatever it was back in the day. I can't even remember. I was in the sushi pools as well. Anyway, it didn't last because as you can see now, like sushi is pretty much a failure from my perspective. They have not really take any great market share across any chains really. Uniswap has always been innovative and continue to be innovative, hence why everyone forks them or is building on top of them. SushiSwap I would say have been left behind, regardless that they've made a ton of money and they probably have a decent treasury, but I just don't really think that they have a really strong team.
SushiSwap's a really interesting one because yesterday they passed a proposal that basically adopted a labs model. Did you guys see this? So they only passed it with, I think, 62% of the vote. And there was a lot of controversy because there were accusations that the team had created different wallets to maximize their governance rights. But they're going to transition to a labs model. So they were entirely SushiSwap DAO, right, making all the decisions. And now they're sending $40 million worth of treasury assets to SushiSwap Labs held vault effectively. So they're going down a centralization route, I think, in response to the fact that they haven't really proved competitive, especially in the Ethereum landscape or anywhere else really at the moment.
And I think that's down to looking at the decentralized DAO model, right? That's what they've tried to be. I don't think they really have strong leadership within the team, and I think that's the biggest thing. But going back to the Solana side again, I think that it is good that is happening to Solana because look, Solana's been and got where it is to today. They've never really had any issues. It's not been stress tested. This isn't a massive issue. It's a massive issue, but it's not a massive. It's not like they've lost funds or there's a big hack on the protocol. This has been stress tested, and it's an issue with the load that is getting because of more people. And if they can fix it, great. That's a great an outcome, right? Is one. Yeah, it's annoying because I had the wormhole airdrop and I had a ton of wallets, which I'm grateful for. So it was lovely. Yeah, I did.
Did you get rid of
I literally dumped the top, but I'm happy with that. Anyway, look, and I justify that because the FDV on launch was ridiculous. And I just didn't see that being sustainable. Anyway, it took me over 2 hours literally just to claim because it was constantly failing, and I was like, can I just up? And I didn't, I'm not like a native Solana. I was trying to up my on Ethereum, up your GUI or whatever, and you can't do that on Solana. But I don't think you can, especially not for the Phantom wallet. So that was a pain, but I think it's a good thing. This has happened because they can just upgrade or do whatever, fix it. And then on the Marginify stuff, I heard, Johnny, you probably can jump in here, but were they stealing rewards, or was the rewards something from a different protocol? Was because that the issues with Solana, because they started the snowball effect of this FUD, right? Or not FUD, but
right. And I just know that for whatever reason, I don't know whether, I'm guessing it wasn't anything malicious, otherwise that would have been the central story, but the rewards just weren't making it to the people that it should have done. And I think that sort of stemmed from the Oracle issue that they had limiting withdrawals and stuff like that. It gets a bit technical at that point. I'm not entirely sure what's going on. But yes, some very, very disgruntled retail consumers from not just their protocol, but also I think Soulblaze as well. So it was slightly systemic, which is maybe once you've roped in other projects, maybe the precedent is there where, vampire attack from Solend, kind of fair enough at this point. Also, that's before you even get to the fact that kind of the way that Mehdi articulated it is maybe pretty accurate. And effectively, you're just trying to poach disgruntled customers or disgruntled community members. And you probably wouldn't think of it, so controversially if like Mehdi said, it was Apple versus Android or something like that. It's kind of just part of the game at that scale. But because it's a very community driven DeFi Solana landscape, maybe just a bit more hostile. But I think probably ethically, not necessarily too much controversy there.
And then does it just destroy Marginify because their CEO or their founder literally just rage quit?
Nah. So this is the thing, right? All the headlines are 155 mil flows out of Marginify amid founder controversy, internal strife. They're still like 750 mil TVL on DeFi Llama. Like, in terms of percentages, they haven't lost that much, right? Like, I mean, they have. Don't get me wrong. Like 100 to 150 million. Would love that. That's a lot of money.
It's a good thing.
But
The
relatively
protocol
speaking,
was able to kind of withstand that 150 mil withdrawal. Like I kind of see
yeah,
that as a good sign. Stress
yeah.
test of both Solana as well as
That's
Margin
very
Fi.
true, actually, because yeah, and the whole point is like, why did the FUDs actually start for? Like, what was the main concept of why like this all came about? For him to lead to one rage quit, like, did this go back and date back to however long, or?
I think withdrawal issues is where it started. There was a serious period. I'm guessing that's over now,
But
but a
why?
serious period
What
where
was
users
that?
just
That
couldn't withdraw their
some
funds.
technical, or they were just withholding because of the airdrop?
I think it was an
Oh, because
Oracle
it's
issue.
okay. Now I get
think,
it.
is
The
what I read,
Solana stuff.
but
Okay.
don't hold me to that on a technical front.
So that's where it causes a big issue, right? Where like we're talking about stress test, and if Solana is having the issue of people taking their money out, is causes a lot of.
So I think the founder resigned because of how the team then dealt with that, or decided to deal with that, or probably really big arguments and blow-ups they had internally about what to do and how to reward users and stuff like that.
So then, as a founder, right? Like I couldn't see myself building a company, but then I guess the company's bigger than the founder at this point, right? Whereas you build a company, and then you're like, oh, this is not great. I don't like the people I've recruited, so I'm gonna quit myself.
Well, I mean, like, you know, the other way to think about it is like a cynical way, which is to say that actually he's definitely made his bags. He'll have a bigger allocation than any other one individual. Maybe now's his just chance to get out if he's not doing it, right? Like you see a lot of like some founders get into a lot of trouble with their community for abandoning projects, whereas this one maybe just sort of taking advantage of the fact that right now I can sort of just wash my hands of this. It's not my fault. It's gone badly. I'm so upset, and he's going to make off, and he's still going to sell his tokens. Like,
Maybe he starts a VC fund.
yeah,
That reminds me of someone.
It has that midlife crisis.
Yeah.
He's reached the VC stage of life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just going back to Solana, yeah, I think it's very bullish. Like I'm very
He's such a
bullish because
maxi.
there is so much demand with the chain.
You
I'm
love
not a Solana
Solana.
maxi, but just I have to like hear me out. So right now, with all of this congestion, we still have 700 plus transactions happening, even though it's getting clogged by bots. That is more transaction than Ethereum and all the L2s combined right now. I think once the parallel fee markets go live, when they have the fee market in order. So, for example, if Cam is trying to do the bridging
I'd
from
never use
wormhole to
wormhole.
somewhere, wherever,
Their
if
UX
he's
is UI is
yeah,
disgusting. Sorry,
if you
Kevin.
were charged, yeah, yeah, if you were charged $10, $5 for that when there was congestion, I think all of a sudden the bots go away. So I think those changes will eventually happen. I think it's just the fact that fee markets are not ready. We're still kind of early here, but given the fact there is so much demand, like there is so much demand that the chain is coming to that point is very bullish from all the angles I see.
But then,
I would rather be long Solana here than Ethereum, if I be very honest.
but to be contrarian, right? Like,
Solana is contrarian, bro.
oh mate. But like, why was Solana set up? It was like Solana is a solution to scalability issues, which it's now suffering from itself. Like, is that not an optical, like a narrative issue for Solana in a really big way? Like, that's like sort of 2020.
No, it is. It is. I don't disagree. But another lens to look at this is Solana was created to solve the scalability issue, but there is so much demand that it was able to cater to so much demand that it in itself is now facing scalability issues, which by the way also looks solvable. So I'm not disagreeing with you. There are
Right.
issues, but the fact that so much demand, like the issue is not coming from the supply itself. It's coming from demand because there's so much demand from all the meme coins, all the farmers, all the airdrop hunters, that sometimes it breaks down. So I think there are a couple of solutions.
Fair point.
Yeah. There are a couple of solutions. Like I think within our portfolio, there, like I was thinking about like a couple of solutions. One is the fee market. I think the fee market in Solana is still broken. I think it's too cheap. I think there should be some dynamic pricing there. And I think the second issue, especially for bots and AI agent, is something along the lines of humanity protocol. So let's say if you want a differentiation and try to create a scalable system, maybe you do some sort of attestation that let's say you're human, you get a priority, something like that. So within our portfolio, we have Humanity Protocol, which is kind of solving that scalability from a human standpoint. But I think Solana, if it kind of implements a couple of these solution, I don't see why it would be a long-term bottleneck.
It's very much achievable. Fair enough. Fair enough. I think really cool question here, guys. Basically, the way I'd phrase this is, would you rather invest in a very, very technical team that probably lacks marketing understanding, or would you rather invest in a very, very sort of brand awareness, marketing oriented team that with maybe a less innovative product? I know that the best projects will have both, yada, yada, yada. But I'm talking here really like, take a project like Algorand back in 2017. It was the OG Ethereum scaling network. Technology was sound, so to speak. Like Silvio Micali basically invented zero knowledge, from what I understand. But obviously never got traction. I think the appeal, the community was basically just never, ever there. They never nailed that. Take something like Blast, on the other hand, that maybe at a technical level isn't that innovative in terms of like the stack it uses, the way that it produces yield. I mean, it may be novel in some ways, but effectively there's no real proprietary technology being implemented there. But very, very crypto savvy marketing side to the team, backed by Paradigm, all the rest of it. Which would you rather go for?
Yeah, I'll have a crack first. I think this is a internal debate we have all the time in the IC, right? Like KOL coin versus a professor coin. My sense is,
I like that.
my sense is, so let's say if you look at your economies around, like not all the time your president or your prime minister are typically the most savviest. They're the best at being good at political maneuvering, right? And communication. So for my mental model, if a founder has those capability or somebody within the team has those capability, it's more important than technical knowledge, because at the end of the day, sometimes these protocols, especially L1s and L2s, we're not going just for a platform. We are kind of going for a nation like economies, like with multiple different verticals, multiple different stakeholders that you have to manage. So for me personally, I would rather go more towards being good at marketing, being good at negotiation, being good at community. And then sometimes if you're lucky, you get both. Like one example is Emin from Avalanche. It's a professor coin, but he's very good at marketing.
Okay, that makes sense. Cam, what about you? You technically minded or marketing oriented?
They have to go hand in hand. We can see some of the, there's so many products out, again, in crypto, just in Web2 as well. Like, I think marketing always wins. It's an unfortunate thing because there's some great people who can build some great tech, but you put that beside some mediocre tech that's similar, but they're great at marketing, they're always going to win. And that's how, and that winning is by, depending on the narrative, but like it's mainly done because of users, right? And you draw users in by great marketing. That's the unfortunate thing. But I think if you're B2B, maybe that's different. But then in crypto, like it doesn't matter, because then if you're talking about, if you are B2B, but then you have a token and the speculation, then you are looking to be marketing to individuals. So I think crypto dynamic is different. But yeah, I think I would say maybe 60%, maybe 70% marketing, and product is the remainder. Again, unfortunate, but it is what it is.
Yeah, you guys are both given the same answer. And even the examples I gave, right? Algo versus Blast in terms of tech versus marketing, community building, stuff like that. It's like there's a very clear winner out of those two in terms of how the market sits at the moment and however many billion Blast still has in TVL.
But Algorand, like, I think maybe last bull run had a great marketing stunt, and then
it was meant to be the CBDC network for the world. It had like some football based partnerships. It like did some interesting stuff, but to be fair, that's a unique one because I think they screwed themselves a little bit with their tokenomics at the beginning. Like they launched with the same valuation as Ethereum at the time, which was pretty arrogant, I think, and they've never ever got that high again. They had to refund people from their pre-sale. So people that got into their ICO, they had to issue refunds. And I think they did accelerated vesting for certain investors that weren't happy, or maybe that was near. But yes, there were other factors at play there for sure. But I think probably I'd sit with you guys in the sense that it doesn't matter how good the product is, if no one's going to hear about it and the message isn't going to be clear, probably a bit of a death sentence in some ways. Okay, here's a really interesting one. And I think I've definitely already got some intuitions in my head about it, but would love to hear what you guys think, being actual institutional investors in the space. But can having certain investor names on a project's list of investors on their cap table kind of replace the need for certain marketing efforts? I mean, like the obvious example is Paradigm, but I'm actually talking like beyond that, right? In terms of how you build a cap table, can that do enough for your marketing efforts? Like,
so I don't know if it's enough. But I would say like it separates the two of, are you a top 10 or are you in the rest of the market? That's how I look at it. It's like the cap tables are a huge value add, like a massive value add. And I think that it does separate of like how well they're going to do. And I would say, of course, that is short term, but it just adds a lot of trust, right? Like if someone's building a DeFi protocol or anything, doesn't really matter. Everything's contract based, right? So having those that are backed by the tier ones, then that just adds a huge level of credibility for all the retailers that are looking to deposit their funds or buy their token, etc. Because it just adds trust straight away.
Yeah.
In comparisons to the ones that who don't get funding or go for level 3 investment.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
Mehdi, what are your thoughts?
I have a very long-winded answer. So in terms of my framework, like I kind of bifurcate deals into 3 parts. One is it's an access deal. Let's say team comes from Google or Microsoft and has all the tier 1 VC like Paradigm, Multicoin, Animoca, whatever. And then you have another side of things where maybe there is one big one, or maybe they're all tier 1.5, but the team is still strong and there's a contrarian play. So I kind of like bifurcate this part into like 3 parts: access deal, money making deal because it's contrarian, or you either pass, right? But in my experience, at least in crypto, what I've seen is in short to medium run, if you have tier 1 VC, it makes it easier for you to onboard. Like it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy at the moment.
Yeah.
It gets easier for you to get tier 1 KOLs because the KOLs are lazy. They don't want to do research and they'll just look at the logos. Then when it comes to exchange listing and launchpad, they also do not want to do research. They'll just basically follow tier 1 investor. And then because of that, as an investor, you do benefit when you have that type of a cap table. But then in some cases, you'll have founders and team that gets complacent and stops grinding and stops hustling. So I think this is where the hustle and then the contrarian play comes in. I've also seen multiple teams that didn't have this tier 1 VC initially, but they hustled and got best KOLs, best exchanges, not because of investors, but because of they're just like pure grind. Like I think one example that comes to mind is Portal, right? Like they did amazing marketing, didn't have any tier 1 VC logo, but got Binance, right? So I think that's how I kind of frame it. You are either access deal or you are basically a contrarian deal in crypto, and both have merits. If you're looking for a contrarian deal, you need to see ability of the founder to basically hustle and grind hard.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So, all right. So here's a question. I don't know whether you guys want to answer it here, but if you had to pick 4 crypto VCs, which investors make you think really seriously about that project? If you had to pick 4.
Yeah, I'll go again. Nothing here is financial advice. Just do your own research.
Yeah, no.
Like recently, one VC I have a lot of respect for is Multicoin. I kind of find if they are on a cap table, it's worth investigating, especially if it's an infra deal. On the consumer side, if you have something like Collab and Currency, I think that's another name. On the consumer side, I kind of respect a lot.
Yeah.
Delphi is another one for gaming. Delphi and Bitcraft, I'll kind of put it in similar category. If it's on gaming, I kind of respect a lot. And then there are a couple of emerging ones, like Hack VC and DAO5 for infra. If they are on a cap table for infra, it means that this deal might be worth paying attention to.
That's pretty cool. Cam, what would be your 4? I like how Mehdi you split those up into almost like sectors, subsectors, verticals. That was kind of cool. But yeah, Cam, sorry.
So I'll just quickly split it off. I won't go into too much detail like Mehdi, but personally, I'll say Electric Capital. I like the founder, super knowledgeable. I like what they're doing in this space. Again, research driven as well, such as Multicoin. Multicoin, I would say, have huge conviction.
They fill rounds.
Yeah, but they're super early, right? Like
they fill rounds.
You look at some of the deepin that's getting hyped now. They've been shouting that for a while. Again, if it wasn't the right timing, or the tokenomics for the teams weren't done the best way, but they'll fix and sort that out, which they're doing on some of the projects. But they were early and knew that this was going to be a big narrative. I don't know if it is because they were pushing the marketing side. Like if you go and look, most of Multicoin are the ones talking about deepin. Like they pushed really hard and have been pushing really hard recently. But regardless of that, I think Multicoin and Electric Capital are some of the two that I think are good. I'd also say Figment is another. I think Figment are, again, they started off like they were mainly validators. And like back in the day, and they were really big on that side.
That's a cool way to do things, though. That's a really cool way to do things.
Yeah, I think now it's saturated. It's a great value add, but it's saturated. But yeah, that's how they started. So I think well, you said 3, right? I think those are 3 other. Yeah, and also okay, maybe last one again, and another big name, but Dragonfly.
Yeah. Dragonfly great as well. Yeah. There's so many good ones out there. It's tough to kind of.
This is the thing. It is really tough. It is really tough. One that. So I love Electric Capital and have done for a while, almost because of just their approach to the space. Like I like to think that I was reading their developer reports before they were cool, so to speak. So that's a very cool one. One that I've had a crush on for a while is, do you know One Confirmation? Right. So really quiet VC, like a small outfit, a lot of capital from what I understand. If you look down their portcos, it's pretty awesome. But I just really like their subtle approach. Like you can tell that they're all network driven.
They're working behind as well.
There doesn't seem to be any ego there, which I think in VC there is sometimes some ego, especially in crypto VC. So really like those guys. Not that I've ever met them, actually. ArcStream, right? One that I know that we know personally, just from knowing those guys. I know how smart they are. I know they like how they navigate the space, and like them an awful lot. And then Mehdi, you spoke about the consumer side, right? Collab and Currency, very good example. I think Sfermion are probably very, very consumer oriented and very, very aware of that. But also Animoca. I know we're not meant to mention it, but in terms of like
this is the guy who said, listen, you can't mention Animoca, and then he mentions Animoca.
Yeah, but I'm the host here, so I get to. I'm in charge. I'm the captain.
Yeah, I think another thing I think I'm looking out for is those VCs which are kind of like small but operating in a niche. I think those are also kind of worth paying attention to, because like some of the names that kind of popped up here are kind of like traditional, big in size. But I think it's also worth paying attention to like sector specific niche VC, like which has like $40-50 million fund.
Which kind of VCs are you thinking here in terms of which sectors?
You mentioned a couple of them, right? Like you mentioned a couple of them, like Collab Currency goes at seed, focuses on seed most primarily, and focuses a lot on consumer. So that's like a kind of like a niche. Initially you had DAO5, 100, like it was a small fund, not 50 million, but I think 100 million fund, just focused on infra. So I think those are also VC kind of worth kind of paying attention to, because then they have the potential to be a big one. I think this was also the story behind Animoca. Like the focus was gaming and NFT, that's it. And then all of a sudden you do become big. So if you have conviction and you have like a sector speciality and you're a niche, I think you also have an edge, rather than just being a generalist fund that just looks at everything and becomes too big one day. So I'm also bullish on like small funds that operates in the niche and have like sector specialist knowledge and
targeted.
Yeah. I think One Confirmation is also like that. Like it focuses a lot on consumer and like crypto native stuff. Initially it was like that. It wasn't like,
I think they did do L1s and stuff like that, like very, very general purpose. But this was like back 16, 17, 18, I would guess, in terms of.
Yeah, One Confirmation, like for me, the investments I remember they made things like OpenSea.
Were they OpenSea?
Yes.
I didn't even know. So they've done equity deals. I thought they were mostly token. Maybe they are mostly token. In fact, now you mentioned OpenSea, one that springs to mind.
Yeah.
Do you know Gumi Cryptos?
Yeah, they're good at it.
Gumi. I like Gumi. And I know that they operate with really, really high conviction. I know they really like to lead rounds. And leading rounds with the scale that they're operating at in really early deals is bold cool, and it's gone well for them. But also I met just on a call, I think maybe a year or two ago, and I don't really know him. But I met Miko, the founder. I think he's a managing partner, and he's cool. I like how he talks about the project. So
I've hosted him for a podcast as well. Like
really,
even apart from crypto, very, very knowledgeable in different domains. Like I remember we had a long chat about keto diet and how it's good for longevity and like thinking clearly. It's a good guy.
Amazing. Good advice for portcos for sure. All right, next question. Right, actually, this one is definitely one that we need to cover before we wrap up. Really broad question: how important are KOLs for a project's success, especially in the early stages? Like Mehdi, you've spoken about this VC. You end up getting really the tier 1 KOLs without necessarily having these investors on the table, sort of implying that it is really, really important. But how important is it? Are there any projects that have done well without it?
I think I'll put it like
necessary evil.
Necessary evil. I think it's just like a marketing engine and distribution. What I don't like is with the KOLs, there's a lot of cyclicality involved. in bull market they become a
That's
thing. In
everything
bear
though,
market
right?
it goes
Like,
away. Yeah, kind of. But I just feel like KOLs become a thing in bull market way more they are in the bear market. While let's say the branding from VC kind of stays constant. But I think for retail, it helps on the awareness side of things. They are also like in Web3, it's also different. Just for allocation, they'll provide this service rather than fiat. So allowing you to have that service from a token rich perspective rather than cash rich perspective, I think is interesting and important for the space. So I think they do play a important role. um, I wouldn't blame KOLs as much as I would do retail. I think retail also kind of need to like educate themselves in terms of, let's say, whatever KOLs are saying and whatever valuation they are saying doesn't necessarily mean it's true or necessary. But I do think they play an important part in terms of the culture of crypto, the crypto Twitter, and kind of like distribution and marketing.
so my take is again like you look, it's marketing, right? So you look at Web2, a lot of companies now, especially on like the cosmetic side or even clothing side as well, they use Instagram influencers. That's like the best way, and affiliate marketing, etc.
Yeah.
That's like the best way for them to gauge a lot of customers and interest. That's how they build their brand these days. So, jumping to Web3 is no different. I guess we just call them KOLs instead of influencers or whatever. So it's just another fancy word. But yeah, super important. I don't see why like it's any different. Everyone should be allowed to do that. However, I think what happens is that projects just don't look at the quality, and I think also KOLs just take things for granted and just don't push the way they should be. So I think they're good, they should be used, but projects need to look at the quality of who they're using. Again, like you can get a big name, but some of the big names just won't work as hard as the smaller guys. So how much are they pushing? Are they actually pushing it to their community, or is it just a blurb that goes around with their name on it because they're on board?
And also the big guys take
Yeah.
advisory. They don't want to invest.
So they have all
wanna take
upside.
advisory. Another
Then they'll get a
nuance I
longer
have.
vesting schedule on
It's not
advisory,
always.
you'd think.
Another nuance I've seen is sometimes in crypto, KOL rather than being seen for marketing, project also kind of see them as a funding mechanism. So I've seen project raise at a very high valuation and raise a lot of money from KOLs because they kind of feel like it's the easy way to kind of raise
That's
money
interesting.
versus, let's say, I've
Is that
seen
because
that
they don't
happen as well.
diligence in the same way that a VC will do? Right?
Yeah,
It's a quicker process.
Yeah, I think so. I think to my earlier point, if you have a tier one VCs in crypto, what typically happens at pre-sale with retail, you go up, like increase the valuation, and even with KOLs, you massively increase the valuation, just like have a slightly
Favorable
more
terms, right, in terms of vesting.
easier vesting. Yeah, favorable vesting. But I've seen project like raise more money from KOLs and sometimes retail than, let's say, the tier one VC as well. So I think this is another playbook which is kind of has a nuance and kind of weird to Web3, especially
So
in
on
bull
that topic,
markets.
right, I think there's
Yeah.
actually one launch pad, I'm not going to name, but they are doing that at the moment. They're pushing for no VCs and pushing to all of their fundraising for that project is to have KOLs on board, and they'll raise all of their money through that, and then that's when they'll accept them.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. It is apparent now. I don't know how like good is it that is like how sustainable. I don't know. We'll see.
Remember last cycle we saw this project called
Oh.
Soul Chicks that raised a lot of their money from launch pads
Yeah.
rather than KOLs.
They
It's
literally
quicker. I mean,
they were
can be
gone
quicker.
in a second. Like they failed
Yeah.
like instantly.
Follow-up question. Obviously, there's a massive, massive spectrum of influencers and KOLs in terms of quality, following, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of garbage out there. There's like, even so Zach XBT every month or so calls out one of the influencers that's basically been dumping while telling everyone to buy. So there's definitely a big spectrum. But in terms of one that we actually respect or we think have some degree of meaningful value add, are there any that are up there? Any
I
specific
like
names that we're
Cam.
like, yeah.
I like Cam. I like myself as a KOL. Yeah. Jokes apart. I think they're like sector specialists now as well. Like in terms of KOLs, you have for gaming Alex Becker, for infra and DeFi, and some of the DGen stuff. You have Ensem. So I think even in terms of KOL, like not only you have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you also have like sector bifurcation. You have different KOLs for infra, then you also have different KOLs for NFTs. Like with NFT, you have someone called Grail and Bling, the Bling, like I'm kind of butchering the name. But then for gaming, you have people like Iliotrade and Alex Becker. And then for infra, you have people like, what's his name? Like he comes on podcasts as well. Santiago, you have Ansem, people like that, people like them. You have Kobe. So you have like different forms of KOL depending on sector and also depending on tier.
Yeah,
but I think we should definitely
Yeah,
be considered.
100%. I'm
What do you
definitely top of there. Like my tweets
Easy.
get like
Well, that's another question,
3
right?
impressions, 0 likes.
We'll retweet more of them, man. We'll do
But
more.
those are
retweets
organic
videos,
and thought leadership, which is
It's true.
yeah,
It's
key
true.
opinion leaders. Opinion matters
It's
here.
true. I love it. Yeah. All right. So here's one. So obviously, there's kind of influencers that are just guys at home on YouTube that have amassed big followings, and they throw arrows on charts and yada,
They have
yada,
0
yada.
conviction.
Are there
But yeah,
any
carry
like
on.
yeah, fair. But are there any that I don't really know how to phrase this, but they're like professional KOLs. So you might call like Hasib Qureshi or something would be one of those where they are in the weeds. They're very, very well respected, but they almost become KOLs or thought leaders in and of themselves, right? Because of where they sit in the space. Are there any like good examples of that? I like James Woe from DFG. He's only got like 27,000 followers, should have a lot more. But effectively knows what he's doing, has the actual track record, and has the understanding that a lot of those sort of call them public figures don't necessarily have. Are there any sort of really good examples that spring to mind other than Cam and Mehdi?
I would say, I think you name a good one being Hasib. I think he's definitely one. I think also, yeah, Samani, I think he's super knowledgeable. And it's someone like, reading his newsletter or listening to some of his podcasts, he's definitely someone to gauge extra knowledge from. Again, like, going back to Hasib, their podcast that they host, I think is great. I think super knowledgeable. Yeah, I think, yeah, from my side, those two. Again, like, I need to, like, touch base with doing more of that stuff. Again, I've just been,
Yeah, I think let's get Hasib and Kyle Samani as guests, both together.
That'd be awesome. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Another one is, what do you think of Arthur Hayes? The newsletters, I think they're really cool. They always they have interesting high conviction statements in them that make them go sort of viral.
I haven't read any of
reported on
his,
widely.
and I think
But I
that
think he's pretty
is the type of writing doesn't fit for me. So I've never really, yeah.
The
Really?
different strategies, right?
I think it's
Too lengthy to me,
too lengthy,
and
or-
like some of this, yeah. So
More trade focused.
Fair play.
I'm gonna give a
Go on.
contrarian answer here. I used to read a lot. Like this was like I used to be very particular about my content diet. But what I've recently started experimenting is stop reading all of that material and just thinking for first principle with your own opinions. I think lately that has worked because firstly you don't get biased because at the end of the day they're amazing thinkers, they're good writers, they can sell you their bags and they can sell you their thinking, and that can like bias your judgment. So initially I used to just for like consumption and just getting up to speed with the space, that was really really important. But I think now in my like the stage of life I'm at, I just feel like it's more important to kind of read the content from first principles. So like read the deck and white paper, and then just do your own due diligence and form your thesis with your own understanding of the market pulse, and just discussing it with like some of the people you're close with. I think is more important in terms of the way I kind of approach the space now. At least again, that's just my view.
I mean, that is the truth. That your own research is going to be better. Like ultimately.
No, I
You should
think
always be
somebody who's
doing
coming
it.
into the space and I think
Influencers could be
their
good.
content is amazing, and I used to follow them religiously when I joined the space. But lately, I've kind of felt like their biases like tend to like creep in. Like you have this, let's say you know Kyle Samani is a good investor, then let's say his ideas like then kind of interfere with your own first principle thinking. At least that's what I felt. So I've like stopped doing that. Like I don't pay attention to that much. I think another good example is rather than reading their stuff, just hosting them for podcasts. Like ask them questions that you would want to ask yourself, right? So I think that could be an interesting way to consume content.
Makes perfect sense. Makes a lot of sense. Cam, is there anything you wanted to add there, sir?
no, I think Mehdi's like literally accurate, and I think that's one of the reasons I've never been a massive reader. I've never really have been. I'm more of a video-based guy. Again, Not done much of that lately as well. Super busy, but I'm one of those guys that like to just go out there myself and learn and educate myself and just experimenting, because I think that's like the best way of doing things.
Definitely true. Like without pretty uncontroversially. All right. So here's a question that I feel like I've already got a high conviction answer to it, but I'm desperately curious to hear what you guys think. So forget centralized projects, forget centralized exchanges, forget B2B businesses. If you are a consumer facing protocol in this industry, are you screwed without having an airdrop? Is that it? Like it's airdrop or bust. I mean, points, whatever, call the different mechanisms, but some kind of incentive reward system where you basically just distribute value for free. Is that a must now?
I don't know, like if airdrop or that matters. I do think that it's hard to answer, right? I don't know. So I think having a token is definitely needed. I think that's like just cause of speculation. It's great marketing, as we've been talking about marketing, and I think it just gauges interest throughout the cycles of the market. Whereas if you don't, then you can get forgotten about like very easily unless your marketing is top notch. Yeah, I think that would be my answer. I can give some examples, but I think that's in short. I think you just need it. Again, people will argue like, what is the point of it? Like, why do you need a token? I think that in crypto doesn't matter. It's purely just speculation.
But airdrops are pretty new. And I say pretty new. I'm talking like, if you look at the big L1s that were doing ICOs in 2017 via CoinList, they never had airdrops. Nothing like that. They had ICOs. They had, public token sales that were usually gated, whitelisted.
I think it's a good marketing mechanism where you have headlines that a wormhole made 30 people millionaire. I think it's good for marketing. I think projects are not. So I think there are two ways to look at it. One is like, okay, it's the ethos of Web3. I'm giving you money. I'm giving back money to my initial users or my community. And the other way, or more cynical way of kind of thinking about this is my marketing budget, which I just gave away. And rather than giving it out in cash, I'm giving it out in equity. I also feel like apart from like these days I'm so busy I don't engage in that much farming activity. I feel like if you're not long crypto in some shape or form, you're kind of screwed anyways. So in this day and age, you have to be long crypto, and being long crypto can come in different shapes and form. Could be long public market things like Solana, Ethereum, Bitcoin, or private deals, or airdrop, or farming, whatever. But I think you have to be, yeah, even Bitcoin mining company. But I think you have to be long Web3 because it's, I think, once in a lifetime generational wealth transfer that's happening. Because think about it, like US dollar is a meme, and we are creating our own memes now.
I like that.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's how I'm gonna put it.
Hey, there was like the one stat that really just got me onto crypto in like a really big, like, effectively there was a point in, I think it was 2020, I think it was during COVID, where 25%, so a quarter of all the dollars that had ever existed in the history of the US dollar, had been printed in the last 6 months. Like, it was just like, imagine if a crypto project did that, just suddenly inflated supply by a third in the space of like, 2 quarters. Like, imagine the uproar that would happen. The US government can just do it like that. All right, so that's all from us here on the DealFlow podcast this week. Just a friendly reminder, again, at the end of the podcast, that nothing in this episode is in any way financial advice. Everything is for entertainment purposes only, and opinions are our own, and that's it.
Yes, thank you so much.